Okay, I think I'm live. 皆さんこんにちは。お元気ですか? How is everybody? Everybody out there in the ether. Let's see when people show up in the chat. It is time for a Godzilla Minus One discussion live stream. What's up, Godzilla 154? It has been a minute, my friend. I am glad to see you in the chat. I miss you, buddy. What's up, Brian? How are you doing? What's up, everybody? I'll tweet the link out. Let me do that. I don't normally do that, but I'll do that really fast. Let me tweet the link out. Hello, me. Sorry, gotta get Twitter up. Gotta find the Twitter. There we go. There you go. Got it all posted on Twitter. There you go. There you go. Hello, I'm back. Hello. Thank you for tuning in. Never lose your nerd. Been a minute since I've seen you, I think. Good to see some friendly faces. No problem, man. I understand Godzilla 154. I've been busy myself. I have been busy myself. Only here for a sec, gonna see it Sunday. Hey Bugs, thank you for tuning in. Yeah, everybody who has not seen the movie yet, we're here to discuss spoilers for the movie, so just be prepared for that. Also be prepared, I'm gonna try and boost my Wi-Fi really fast, so if this winds up dropping the stream for a second, my bad. Let's just, yes. Okay, any moment now the stream, perfect. I think the stream might drop for just a second, but it should be back on. Should be anyways. Trying to boost the quality of the stream. You're going to see it Sunday, so you have to catch on the replay. All right, thank you very much for stopping by, Never Lose Your Nerd. How many people here have seen Godzilla Minus One in the chat so far? How many people are up to date on the movie? Curious to know how many people have seen it. I know lots of people on Twitter have seen it. And what does everybody think about it? What's up, Trey? Connor, thank you for tuning in. Can't wait to see the movie. Wet Paint Pictures, what's up? Godzilla Cartoons sci-fi horror fan, what's up, man? I'll probably stream a couple more times over the next couple days just to chat about Minus One, to chat about Monarch, to chat about all that good stuff. Love your videos, man. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much, Blah. I appreciate that. You saw it yesterday. It was amazing going to try and see it again ASAP. Yeah, actually, I can't stream for long today. I'm going to see the movie again. So I'm going to be bouncing out here in not too long to go watch the movie again with a different group of friends than I saw it with yesterday. So that'll be fun. Godzilla chasing the boat might be your favorite sequence. That, Wet Paint, is probably my favorite sequence as well. I don't know. I like a lot of the movie. So it's really hard to pick a favorite. But that's definitely one of my favorites for sure. I love the scene of Godzilla chasing the boat. You've already seen it's phenomenal. That's not the Congo 5 cup. What a throwback. The Congo 5 cup is now currently sitting right off screen over here. You remember when I used to have that classic Congo 5 icy? I used to have an icy cup from 2005 and it was like so watered away that it was purely white. That got thrown away on accident. I'm not the one who did that. My mom saw it and she didn't know what it was and she tossed it. And I will always be sad about that. But I do still have my my universal Kong cup. Unfortunately, my real Kong cup got destroyed. Just got home and I saw it Wednesday. We'll be seeing it again Sunday. Nice Godzilla Kiryu. It's not quite how you spell Kiryu, so I'm a little tripped up on that name. Kiryu. It's a masterpiece. I haven't seen it yet, but I don't care too much about spoilers. Fair enough. Love it. I love it. Top 3 Godzilla movies easily. Hello. Saw it in IMAX, and it might be my favorite Godzilla movie, but might be my favorite Godzilla movie, but definitely favorite modern Godzilla. Hello. I wish Super 7 didn't get the license to do a -1. I'd prefer NECA. Well, NECA does not do these Godzilla figures anymore, so it had to be Super 7. NECA doesn't do those. NECA didn't put in a proper bid for the Godzilla license a couple years ago, so they lost the license. They just gave it up to Playmates, if you didn't know. Good news, D-Man, -1 will have a wide release here in Mexico. Bad news is delayed till December 28th. Oh, I'm sorry so much, Romo. Do your best to, if you care about spoilers, do your best to avoid spoilers. I'm really sorry. That sucks. Saw it last night. Absolutely phenomenal. Glad to hear. This film reminded me of why I love Godzilla. I want to watch it a dozen more times. Gonna try to see it again Sunday. I saw the movie yesterday and just got the SH figure right now, and which is amazing. Well, good job, man. That's awesome. I'm glad you got the figure. Mine's still in transport, so I guess I'll see when mine gets here. Dear Americans, Godzilla -1 will finally be released tomorrow. Please enjoy from a Japanese Godzilla fan. Hello, MD.2023. Welcome to the stream. Konnichiwa. I hope you're doing well, man. Genki desu. I saw it last night. Definitely crowded IMAX screening. Loved it. A decently crowded IMAX screening. That's what we like to hear, Danny. My IMAX screening last night was pretty crowded as well. And my screening tonight, which is not IMAX. I think my theater is only doing IMAX for yesterday, and I don't think it's going to do it again. My screening tonight is pretty full, but it's a much smaller auditorium. One of my favorite sequences is the beginning of the film on Odo Island, such an unexpected but awesome sequence. I could not believe that it was Odo Island. I loved it. I didn't know it was Odo Island when I saw... I didn't know it was Odo Island when I saw the movie in Japanese. I was listening for the word Odo, but they actually don't say it until much later in the movie. They don't say the word Odo out loud until much later in the movie, so I missed it. But I was so glad to see they brought that classic reference back. Loved it, man. I know. Part of the lore gone forever. It bums me out big time. The closest theater playing -1 to you is 2.5 hours away. I am sorry, my friend. Well, that drive is longer than the movie itself, so I guess you're going to have to weigh the options there. His roar in IMAX almost blew off some dude in the theater's toupee. I get what you're saying. It was loud. The IMAX in Japan, they do this thing right before the IMAX plays in Japan where they kind of test the sound out for you, and like they have this jet engine that like and it really rattles the whole room. It's pretty cool. I thought the IMAX in Japan had better sound quality than the IMAX in the United States that I saw, but last night actually had one of the better sound quality experiences I've had in a movie theater in a while, and I really liked it. There were far more funny moments than I expected. Akitsu made me laugh just about every scene he was in. Akitsu is probably my favorite character in Godzilla -1. I really like it. It's between him and Noda. The two of them are competing for my favorites. I really like both of those characters. I definitely agree. The movie had a lot more humor and a lot more heart than I was expecting, and I'm so glad for it. Do you think it's a masterpiece? I don't know. I guess I don't throw that word around as much anymore as that I used to when I was younger. If I was younger, I would absolutely say yes. I don't know. I think I would probably agree with all of the people calling it a masterpiece. I think especially when you consider the budget, especially when you consider where the Japanese film industry is at compared to America. And considering it, I view it about on par in terms of quality as something like Oppenheimer, which I would consider a masterpiece. I would generally agree that, yes, it was a masterpiece. And I know for a fact that the people I saw it with would agree that it was that terms of quality of a movie. Haya will potentially make a -1. Well, if Haya makes one, it might be my very first Haya figure. What's up, Joey? Welcome to the stream. I think it was a typo, and I just ran with... and I think... What? I don't know what you're quite talking about. Oh, it was a typo back in 2011 or 2013, your name? I gotcha. Yes, you are allowed to spoil the movie here. We were talking spoilers. The figure art figure is too small and too expensive. Too bad Super 7 released... too bad Super 7 is releasing one. They might have made a quality... They might have been a quality control nightmare? What might have been a quality control nightmare? Super 7? I don't understand what people don't like about Super 7. I've always thought their figures looked super high quality, and I've seen a couple in person and they looked incredible. Was floored by how great it was. Even my fiance loved it. That's what we like to hear. Got to watch it last night. It was great. Probably going to watch it again this weekend as well. Yeah, I'm about to leave to go see it again in just a little over an hour. Hey, D-Man, it was nice to bump into you in Japan. Oh, did we meet in Japan? Hello. Hope you had a great time. Do I know you? Helmy? Did you say hello when we met in Japan? Do you have social media that I would recognize you on? I don't recognize the name, unfortunately. But I'm very bad with names, actually. I'm unfortunately, I'm very bad with names. I don't know. Don't see a social media under that name that I recognize. But it was nice to say, oh, Helmy, are you the one who I met? Did I meet you on the elevator? I met you on the elevator, right? It's because it was such a brief interaction. I think you and I met in the lobby and then we got in the elevator together, I'm pretty sure. Yes, okay, perfect. Yeah, you were the one staying in the Godzilla room. How was that? I heard that party was a lot of fun. The movie's design for the Godzillasaur is much better than the figure. Yeah, I really like the Godzillasaur. Many of you guys know I actually really dislike the Godzillasaur in the 1991 movie. I think it's a very underwhelming design. I think its portrayal is super awkward and a little offensive, and I liked the way they did it in -1 about 10 million times more. Great channel. I cannot wait to see it Sunday. Well, I hope you enjoy. Loved the movie, literally peak cinema. It's one of the best openings in any Godzilla movie, in my opinion. I think I would agree. I think that the opening of this movie was stronger than the opening of most Godzilla films. I loved the... Oh, I just read that one. I went to an early screening, 5 p.m., so it wasn't full, but there was a decent amount of people there. I went to a 5 p.m. showing as well, Raph. Thank you for tuning in, Raph. Nice to see you. I sadly can't see this in theaters, so we'll wait until it comes to on-home purchase. I don't know when it will come to in-home purchases, but I hope sooner rather than later. I don't want to see or hear any spoilers. Well, then don't stick around in this live stream. I appreciate that you left the comment, Wolf, and then left. I hope someday you see this. Shout out to you. The beginning sequence was a banger, very, very pleasant surprise. Yeah, I loved it. And it was nice to see it because it kind of validated some of the rumors we had talked about, specifically, like, if you've seen my coverage of the stuff that Yudai was talking about, it was nice to be able to talk about that kind of stuff. Like, I dug into so many Japanese outlets that I saw all over Twitter and stuff that we were able to kind of piece together a much more accurate web of what the movie became rather than what we got, like, what all the Americans or Western fans were talking about. Well, hello, Romo. Yeah, please pop out of the stream. We're already discussing spoilers. You need to start getting the highest stuff. The Ghidorah is about to come out. I know I should. The Godzillasaur was crazy terrifying. I loved it. I really loved it. Here is something that I am very curious to see how things go over. I'm very curious to see how fans respond to the fact that the movie just wasn't what so many Westerners were claiming it was. Like, I dug so far into all of the rumors about -1. While I don't go into spoilers or leak territory, I really dislike spoilers and leaks. So many people were reporting the two Godzillas and Godzilla 0, two Godzillas. It's going to be about two Godzillas fighting each other and all that stuff. And so I had heard all that stuff, especially because I had stumbled upon it without knowing that they were like leaks for Godzilla Minus One. Long before the title for Godzilla Minus One was revealed, I had stumbled upon people explaining what the leaked story of Minus One was going to be with the two Godzillas and all that stuff. And then you saw so many people taking that and just running with it in order to clickbait you, clickbait their viewers, and because clearly it was marketable. But the second the title wasn't revealed to be Godzilla Zero, I already knew that was bullshit. And so I did digging on my own, and actually it was through Dai-chan Movie Room. Go check out Dai-chan. Dai-chan's Movie Room. He is the reason that I got to see Godzilla Minus One in theaters in Japan. I was going to be able to go anyways during the day, but he got me into the early IMAX showing that I really wanted to see. Without him, I wouldn't have seen the opening morning screening in IMAX that I really wanted to go see, so please go check him out. But it was actually through one of his videos that I learned that in Japan it was just common knowledge that there is not going to be two Godzillas in the movie. There wouldn't be. It was common knowledge that not only would there not be two Godzillas in the movie, but that the reason the title Godzilla Zero even came about was because somebody had seen a crew member wearing a Minus One shirt and misidentified the zero at the end of the logo as being Godzilla Zero. And ever since then, literally months and months ago, I was talking about how there would be no two Godzillas, but you still had people bullshitting you guys, telling you that there would be, up until recently. And I really am curious to see if that's going to cause some sort of repercussions for fans who are a little disappointed that's not what they got. Well, personally, I, on the other hand, was so satisfied with the fact that it was just the Godzillasaur evolving. That's what I was hoping for in the movie, and that's what I got. Oh, thank you so much. I like the spelling of that, Dr. Terminator. Thank you so much very much. I really appreciate that, Dr. Terminator. I really appreciate that. I have a theory. Godzillasaur might be a descendant from the dinosaur Jackpile or a non-dinosaur Papasaurus. What on earth? I have to Google that. What are you talking about? Okay, Jackpile. Got it. I'm not a dinosaur guy, so these names are like foreign to me. You know, I think the Godzillasaur was more of just they reverted Godzilla into a bit of a T-Rex. It's entirely possible that that's kind of what they were riffing on, was the Jackpile or the Papasaurus. But I would think that they just kind of took Godzilla's design and made him a bit more T-Rex like. I think that's more of what they did. But I really liked it. I really preferred that they went. I liked that they showed the evolution route. I think the evolution in Shin Godzilla, the evolution in Godzilla Singular Point always felt a little gimmicky to me. It always felt a little like we got to sell some action figures to me. Especially in Singular Point, where it felt like that was kind of the purpose of the movie, was to sell us action figures. With the what did I just say? Singular Point? Yeah, Singular Point kind of felt like they were trying to sell us action figures with the evolutions. Like Shin Godzilla did it, and it was kind of a new original idea. Then when you swing around to doing it in Singular Point, it felt very much like Shin Godzilla did it, and it was very successful in Shin Godzilla, so let's do it again. I felt that Godzilla Minus One found a way to do it in a really natural way that thematically tied into the story. I thought that it was the best pre-evolution Godzilla design we have ever seen. I also thought the characterization of him was really, really interesting, especially in the novelization for Godzilla Minus One, which was written by the director of the movie, Takashi Yamazaki. I really liked that. And I liked the way that he was still kind of a fucker, but he was also semi-peaceful. But I guess the point I'm making is that I just felt like it was a more natural way to introduce that storyline. I felt that it was really well handled. And I really liked that they showed the actual birth of Godzilla through the nuclear explosion, through the Baker nuclear test. I mean, at the end, wouldn't there be a second Godzilla? Well, it'd be the same Godzilla again, rather than a second Godzilla. Although I think his design would be radically different because he's going to be all scarred now. Clearly, when Godzilla takes damage, scar tissue forms on him. So imagine what he's going to look like now that he has been obliterated. I think he would be like fully scarred up and really crazy looking. I'm a Japanese here living in Japan, so people want to ask me something or want an opinion, feel free to do so. Well, thank you very much, Little Dark Age. I appreciate that. That's really nice of you. I really appreciate you. The producer of Godzilla Minus One says it'll be released in theaters until January. If D-Man's schedule was as good as Japan's, it would be a mega hit in America. I'm so confused on what that quite means. The producer of Godzilla Minus One says it'll be released in theaters until January. I track that part. If D-Man's schedule is as good as Japan's, it would be a mega hit in America. You just mean if it does as well as in America as it did in Japan? Is that what you're talking about? I think that Minus One was severely under-marketed in America, so I don't actually think it'll have the biggest play here in the United States, but I do kind of expect it to crack the top 10 in the box office. I think it will, because typically the box office top 10 these years are a little lower than they used to be, so I think they'll crack the top 10. Cell action figures was literally the reason Shin has forms. And you can tell. I mean, it's kind of obvious, especially in Singular Point. I didn't really get that was the full intention in Shin Godzilla. Felt a little more like they just wanted to do something different. But you definitely kind of felt that way. I felt that way in Singular Point. The closest thing we've gotten to a Godzilla horror movie since the original. What's your theory about the mark on Noriko's neck? So, as far as the more horrific aspects of the movie, I think it is more successful as a horror movie than the 1954 Godzilla. I think the 1954 Godzilla was probably scarier at the time it came out than this movie is today. I would assume that people in the 1950s were probably pretty freaked out by 1954's Godzilla, whereas Minus One, I don't think people are going to be really freaked out by. But I think in terms of, in terms of suspense, in terms of the quality of the horror aspects of the movie, Minus One is a more effective horror film than the original Godzilla. As far as the theory of the mark on Noriko's neck, well, as I understand it, and I need to dive into the novelization myself. I've got it coming. I've got a friend who's read it. Dai-Chain Movie Room read it. I've got a friend who's read it, and he's been telling me about it, so I've got the novelization coming. It should be here at some point, some point or another. Why are you popping into a spoiler stream, Tubby, if you don't want spoilers? So anyways, the mark on Noriko's neck, as I understand it, it's supposed to symbolize how she's been marked by Godzilla permanently. In terms of Godzilla's DNA was scattered throughout the city, as we know. And as I understand, based on what I've heard about the novelization and based on the people I talked to in Japan when the movie came out, when I was there, it kind of sounds like the idea is that the flesh that's been blasted off Godzilla isn't fully dead, in the same vein that the big chunk of flesh we see at the end of the movie is still reanimating. So I think it's kind of maybe symbolizing that Noriko is only alive because Godzilla's DNA has kept her alive in some way. Like maybe she got attached to Godzilla cells and is cursed as a result of it. Not in a Biollante-esque way, but in more of a nuclear or more of a radiation poison kind of way, where it's maybe it'll keep her alive but also poison her kind of way. It's kind of what I think it was doing plot-wise. In terms of what it thematically was representing, I think it just represents kind of the marks of war, where Shikishima's war wasn't over, and that did bear a toll on the people around him. And I think it's showing that Noriko is also marked by war permanently as well. In the same way that he is scarred forever, she is scarred forever as well. He was scarred by Godzilla, she is now scarred by Godzilla as well. I think that's kind of thematically what that was saying, is that not even she could escape the marks of war. No, this Godzilla does not mess around. He is vicious. The only reason Toho allowed Anno to make Godzilla evolve was because they could make more merch. Yeah, I believe it. I think that was published in one of the Shin Godzilla booklets, I think that's where that information comes from. I didn't know about the two Godzillas rumor. Of course, I had assumed it'd be something like Tanaka's book, where there's a family, crossroads happen, the surviving one's angry, the surviving one's devastated and angry. I'm kind of, well, there is the implication that there could be more Godzillas. Shikishima is not certain that the Godzilla who shows up and attacks them is initially the same Godzilla as the one he met. Remember when they're at sea, on the Shinsei Maru, Shikishima's kind of speculating that maybe it could be a different Godzilla. He doesn't know if it's going to be the same one. All he knew was that it was bigger than the one that attacked him previously. And, you can backdoor in a second Godzilla into a sequel if you wanted to, based on what happens in this movie very easily. Godzilla is a hater in this movie. From the second we see him on the island, he's killing everyone in sight. Well, as I understand this as well, this kind of goes back to the novelization. Yeah, the neck burn is representing nuke scars. Yeah, exactly what I'm saying. Radiation poisoning. She's permanently scarred by the disaster. I think it's fairly thematically tied into the fact that everybody who survived through Hiroshima and Nagasaki was permanently affected by that, and sometimes literally physically, in terms of their radiation damage and what it did to their skin. Yeah, I agree. I think that's what it was kind of symbolizing with Noriko's neck. Oh, what I was saying about Godzilla on Oto Island, as I understand it, the novelization makes it a little more clear. Godzilla kicks up all those fish, and there's kind of a symbiotic relationship between the people on Oto Island and Godzilla himself, where people can kind of a little bit feed on the fish that he kicks up, and in return, I think they give him gifts or something, kind of like in the original movie. They say when fishing's bad, they sent a girl out for Godzilla to eat so that he'd stop eating fish. I think it's kind of similar to that in -1, but I don't think they're sacrificing women to him. I think it's more like cattle or something. But the point is, as I understand, Godzilla kicks up fish for them. There's kind of a symbiotic relationship between him and the islanders. Godzilla's not a bad guy. He consciously chooses to spare Shikishima's life because Shikishima does not shoot him. So Godzilla's not going to attack him until the mechanics shoot at him first, and then Godzilla goes into rampage mode. The only reason Godzilla attacks the guard tower in the first place is because they blasted a light on him and freaked him out, and so he attacks. I also think that there's something to do with, Godzilla is an animal who's living on an island that's now directly being impacted by war, and so he's probably uncertain and uncomfortable and afraid of what's going on. I think that there's a lot more sympathy to him than the movie really allows us to spend time with, which would have been a nice thing for the movie to do. Kind of a missed opportunity, but it would have been a nice thing for the movie to do, where we get to see a bit more about the sympathetic side of Godzilla before the atomic bomb. That would have been interesting, I think. But I think in terms of pacing, the movie was so well paced, there's not really a ton I would want added to the film because I really, really liked how smooth the movie felt. December 1st is movie day in Japan. You can watch a movie for 1,000 yen. I'm going to see Godzilla Minus One. Well, that sounds awesome, MGDA. That's really cool. I hope that really boosts Minus One again at the box office. That's actually really exciting. And I hope that maybe the news of the film's success in America can help have some sort of symbiotic relationship in terms of the film's release in Japan, where it can reboost that box office as well. I do know the movie's doing very well over there. The movie's doing very well back home. Yes, the last shot is a very obvious GMK reference, very, very clearly, to the point where my brother, who's not a Godzilla fan, saw it and kind of understood what that was supposed to be. And I lived it. I'm a big fan of that. Hello. Hello, Dashi roll number 3. Dashimaki Sangoro. Dashimaki Sango konnichiwa. The director said his idea of Godzilla is like the giant one in Princess Mononoke. Kind of like a nature spirit, which is pretty cool. I don't entirely get that vibe, but I like it. I like the inspo. Godzilla did wake up pissed. D-Man, what's up? The legacy of Godzilla. Wow, I'm so bad at reading. I'm dyslexic and sleepy. What'd you say? The legacy of Godzilla just got a big pick-me-up. It was nice to see a Godzilla film that wasn't drowned in a cheese feast. So here's my theory nuts for kaiju, and I said this on a previous live stream, and now that everybody's being able to see Godzilla Minus One, I'm curious to hear what people think about my theory. My theory is that Godzilla Minus One, had it gotten a proper United States advertising campaign, had it gotten a big wide-scale release, had it also been nominated into awards and been a big awards contender, which it really wasn't, my theory is that Godzilla Minus One would have done irreparable damage to the MonsterVerse and would have eventually killed it. That's my theory. I think people would have seen the movie and gone, oh, so that's what Godzilla could be and should be. Not the cheesy, goofy, silly MonsterVerse. I think it would have done irreparable damage to the MonsterVerse had the movie gotten a wide-scaled, proper advertising campaign. And maybe for the better it didn't, because the MonsterVerse is more globally profitable and is keeping Godzilla more relevant than I think Minus One would, especially because Toho's not moving swiftly on a sequel. I have a theory that Toho's waiting until awards season is over to make their decision on if they're going to make a sequel or not, but I know that the director Takashi Yamazaki was not quite anticipating the movie to do so well that it would warrant a sequel, so I know he's already working on other projects. Which is a shame, because I don't want a different director to do a sequel to Minus One. I think the only person you could have follow up Minus One would be the director Takashi Yamazaki, simply because he took Godzilla to literally a more grounded place than we have ever seen in the entire franchise ever. And I think if you add any other director, I feel like Godzilla directors oftentimes backpedal on themselves, where they feel like, oh, giant monsters are so silly. If I'm going to do a giant monster movie, there has to be some level of self-awareness, some level of cheese to it. I can't just make a giant monster movie. That's ridiculous. And I think even when you have someone like Gareth Edwards make Godzilla 2014, when the monsters are fighting, there's still a self-awareness and a sense of humor to the battle. When Godzilla tail slaps the male Muto and kills him, it's epic, and it's also kind of a little humorous. And when you have monsters fighting, it gets a little silly, regardless of how serious the movie around it is. And Gareth Edwards knew that. I mean, he's admitted that in interviews. Gareth Edwards has admitted that he has a sense of humor with the monster battles in the movie. That's why they do the cutaway gag at the airport. And I think that if you have a director like Takashi Yamazaki handling it, I think he'd be earnest enough to do a monster versus monster movie in a way that wouldn't compromise the tone of Minus One, and I have a feeling any other director would. Shin Godzilla, it's so freaking goofy at times that when people say it's like the most serious Godzilla movie ever, what are you talking about? The movie is silly from start to finish, especially with the dialogue and the characters and the scenarios. So I really prefer the way that Yamazaki handled Godzilla. What's up, Rick? How you doing? It's nice to see you pop into a stream. I like it. He says, what's up, D-Man? Minus One has taken over Destroya as my second favorite Godzilla film. My only complaint was that the film never gives Godzilla any sympathetic light. I think we could have gotten one scene with him. I completely agree. I don't think it's my second favorite Godzilla movie. I'm not going to rank it yet. I probably won't rank Minus One for over a year, just because I don't want those rose-tinted glasses to place it higher than it should be, or lower than it should be. Like, for instance, Shin Godzilla, when I saw it was like my favorite Godzilla movie, is not in my top 5 anymore. Or Godzilla vs. Kong, when I saw it. Actually, initially, when I saw Godzilla vs. Kong the very first time, I was underwhelmed with it big time. And then it was upon my second viewing of Godzilla vs. Kong that I really appreciated the film. And now I'm back to being semi-underwhelmed with it, although I still like it more than I probably liked it my first viewing. So I'm going to hold off on ranking Minus One, but I do agree that if I had to add anything to the movie, it would be a bit more of a sympathetic light on Godzilla, and the way I would do that is through the Godzilla sword. Not in the way that they did in 1991, because that was awkward and cringe. But I would like it to be done a little more sensitively. And I think Minus One was a very sensitive movie. Yeah, the implication of how painful the blast were to Godzilla in all of his physical movements. It would have been great to see some sort of dialogue on it. Yes, the way that Godzilla moves so stiff, Raph. Yeah, that's kind of the stuff that I was talking about, like when I reviewed some of the trailers and when I did breakdowns and stuff. I really liked the way that Godzilla moves so stiff and awkwardly in Minus One that you kind of feel like the guy is so he's so messed up that no matter where he goes, he'll never belong. It was really sad. I liked it. I also liked that Godzilla felt like he had to exert himself so much. Like, he can barely get his feet above the ground in that final, when he comes on land in the last scene of the movie, and he's trying to walk through that village. He's not intentionally stepping on the buildings as much as his feet just literally can't step over them because he's so heavy. And it's kind of has this level of, like, sympathy, and also Godzilla's really exerting himself the same way that when Haruo Nakajima played Godzilla in 1954, that dude had to overexert himself so much just to get the most minimal movements out. And I feel like they kind of accomplished that really well in Minus One. They kind of give the same feel that Godzilla's working so hard to get movement across that it felt like there was a man in that suit trying his heart out to give a performance. I loved it. I loved it. You're watching from Japan. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I hope I said your name right. Dashimaki. Dashimaki Sangul. Dashimaki Sangul. I hope I say your name right. Konnichiwa. Arigato. It was a good Godzilla Minus One movie. I like that comment. It was a good Godzilla Minus One movie. I agree it was a good Godzilla Minus One movie. The tonal whiplash from Minus One to Godzilla X Kong is going to be insane. Godzilla Minus One could not have come out at a better time. I'm really burnt out on the MonsterVerse. And I know it's kind of weird to say because there's not too many entries. But I think what happened with the MonsterVerse for me was I got such whiplash from episode 7, was it 7, of the Skull Island anime, that I think it made me literally rethink my feelings on the entire MonsterVerse overall. That's how much I was disappointed with that episode. That over the past couple months, I've come to feel about the MonsterVerse that it's decent in terms of individual entries, but in terms of an overall narrative, and in terms of being a cinematic universe, I find it to be really disappointing, and to be filled with missed opportunities. And I think as far as being a cinematic universe, the MonsterVerse is no longer fulfilling its duty. And it's gotten to the point where as much as I think Godzilla X Kong is going to be a movie I like, I'm not terribly excited about it. Unfortunately, like, I think the trailer is going to change that. I think when I see the trailer, I'll be back on board and I'll be like, this is going to be a fun time. But I don't really want a fun time in a Godzilla movie right now. I got Godzilla vs. Kong. It was as fun as I wanted for the moment. I really got the fun out of it. Like, Godzilla vs. Kong came out a perfect time as well, where I needed something fun. I needed it. I needed an escape, and it was the best escape I had ever. Godzilla X Kong could be that, and it could be exciting, and that's kind of the lens I'm going to hope for, is that it's going to be the best escape I have in a long time. But I don't want that right now. I wanted something a little more introspective. I wanted something a little more grounded. I wanted something a little more serious. I wanted what the MonsterVerse never gave us, and I got Minus One, and that was what I wanted. And I'm so happy for it. I'm so happy to have both. You speak Japanese very well. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I don't know if I did well when I was in Daichan's video. I was in Daichan's video this week, and I was talking about Godzilla Minus One. If you want to go see another review of mine, you can go check out my review for Godzilla Minus One on Daichan's Movie Room channel. And I opened it in Japanese, and I have literally no idea how I did, to the point where I actually forgot what words I was saying when I was trying to do subtitles for the video. I forgot what I couldn't even tell what I was trying to say. I was so confused by what I was saying in that video. So I don't know. I don't know if I speak Japanese well, but I'm really trying to learn. I think it's a high quality Showa style universe with attempts at a long-term storytelling, long-term storytelling that haven't worked out. I would agree with that entirely. It very much perpetuates all of the stereotypes about Godzilla being a silly, goofy, dumb franchise, and it's very Showa, very mid to late Showa, definitely on the later side of things. And that's fine. There's obviously a big fan base for the later Showa. I'm obviously an early Showa boy, So that's why the MonsterVerse is kind of steered away from the stuff that interested me in the first place. With the current state of popcorn cinema, I feel like it's going to bomb. Godzilla 154, I fear you might be right. I think that people are kind of over that type of movie. I think Godzilla X Kong is coming out at a very bad time, and I hope that the MonsterVerse course corrects, because Monarch Legacy of Monsters is being received very well. And I think if they course correct back to doing things like Monarch Legacy of Monsters, we'll be in good shape. I don't think it'll flop, but I do think it will underperform, similar to King of the Monsters. I think if the movie does worse than King of the Monsters, we'll be in trouble. But I don't think it will bomb. I think that's not going to happen. I just don't think it will overperform. Yeah, I agree. I agree, Rick. I think that because Wingard's back, this will actually probably be the most consistent MonsterVerse movie we have in terms of from one movie to the next. I think it's going to feel more like a true sequel to Godzilla vs. Kong than we have gotten a true sequel in the MonsterVerse to date. And I'm actually kind of excited for that. Like, Wingard, I don't think is going to continuity error his own movie. So, I'm excited for that. Which is another reason why I don't really want someone other than Yamazaki to do a sequel to Godzilla Minus One, at least yet, because I don't want the tone to be compromised, and I don't want the story to be compromised. For instance, I don't think in a sequel to Godzilla Minus One, which I would love to see, I don't think Shikishima should come back in any capacity fighting Godzilla. I personally think the story should transition over to someone like Mizushima, and have Mizushima take up arms against Godzilla, because he's proud to be a warrior. I think Shikishima needs out, and I would hope that if he's back in a sequel, he's kind of... I would hope he gets a happier ending, and I think that the person who would give that to him is Yamazaki, who displayed such compassion for his characters. I was blown away by the compassion that Godzilla Minus One featured for its characters. The fact that their goal in the movie is to prove that life isn't worthless, to prove that the fight doesn't have to be futile, to prove that you don't have to sacrifice innocent people to achieve your means. And they pull it off to the point where not a single major character dies. I thought it was so beautiful. I thought it was such beautiful storytelling. I loved it. And I know some people feel cheated that Noriko survived. I know some people feel like it ruined the stakes. And I could not disagree more. Because what I think would have ruined the stakes is if Noriko was blown up. Shikishima is pissed off, wants vengeance for her, flies his plane to do a kamikaze, and like, let's say he accidentally ejects. Or he ejects because there's just simply the ejector seat's built into the plane, so he just doesn't. You know, it's like there's not a story reason where you find out he actually learned a really valuable lesson, and he has been carrying the weight with him this whole time. I guess what I'm saying is Godzilla Minus One did such a good job with Shikishima's story arc that by the end of the movie, there needed to be a reward for him. If he hadn't earned it and she was alive and it was like, well, the plane ejected him. He got out because the plane ejected him. Or when he tries to pull that switch to prime the bomb, it ejected him. Like he didn't know it was going to do that. You know, if it wasn't a conscious choice he made, if he hadn't been willing to lay down his life to make amends for the things he has done, I think then Noriko showing up at the end would feel really cheap, because it'd be like, well, there's no consequences. Everybody gets away. They just get away with it. Whereas on the complete opposite end of the spectrum happens in Godzilla Minus One. Every character works so hard to achieve their happy ending that the fact that they pull it off, I thought was so touching. That's the reason that when we ended the movie, people were crying in our theater in Japan. People were literally breaking down on the stairs, not making it out the door because they were crying so much. It was such a beautiful ending to the movie. I loved it. That reveal that the mechanic told Shikishima to live was so great. Raph, that scene, my brother, who's not a Godzilla fan, He's just a fan of movies. He's the biggest cinephile I know, but he's not a pretentious one. Like, his taste in movie is so vast. He likes artistic movies, but he cannot get enough of bad popcorn films. He found that this was the greatest Godzilla movie ever made. It was his personal favorite. It was actually everybody I saw it with yesterday. I saw it with a group of 5 people. Oh, did I? 5 people? How many people was it? There was 4 of us. 5, 6 people. I saw it with 6 people yesterday. It was every single one of their favorite Godzilla movie. Every one of them thought it was their favorite. And every single one of them thought it was elevated beyond the Godzilla title to just being a good movie, as they said, which I think is a little dismissive of the Godzilla franchise, but that's how they viewed it. And that's fine. But my brother, it was literally like tearing up and whimpering during that reveal that Shikishima was allowed to live. And what I think is interesting is I don't think that his life was going to be spared. I don't think Tachibana would have spared Shikishima's life had Shikishima not demonstrated that he truly learned his lesson, which I think is kind of a metaphor for the filmmaker. I think Yamazaki, when he wrote the script, probably wouldn't have... I don't think he would have spared Shikishima's life had Shikishima not learned such a valuable lesson. But Shikishima, not only does he accept the responsibility for what he caused in the past, and he owns up to it, and he's been carrying the weight with him every single day since it happened, but he also now has learned to care for someone else. He's not just in it for himself anymore. He's not... I think that was what sold Tachibana. Shikishima didn't just decide that he was going to crash the plane and kill himself because he felt bad about the past and he just wanted out of here. He was doing it to protect the future, to protect Akiko. I think that's what sold Tachibana on telling him about that switch, because I don't think Tachibana would have told him that was put in there had that not happened. But the scene where Tachibana tells him to live and then is so relieved to see he lived, this guy who has hated him for years, the fact that he's so relieved to see he lived, it was so beautiful. It was so beautiful. You want a sequel too? Mizushima. Mizushima is amazing. We love Mizushima. He's so good. Yes, Godzilla biting people. Is that the bite of 54? 45, my friend. 45. Yeah, when Godzilla is chomping people and just throwing them through the air, I loved it. It was so fun. I loved that stuff. Godzilla doesn't eat people, and I liked to see that he was just tearing into people with his mouth. It's not something that Godzilla does a lot, so it felt very scary and personal and awesome in a very Green Gargantua kind of way. It's why the Green Gargantua is so goddamn terrifying, because he eats people. I don't think that that's storytelling that only Japanese filmmakers can achieve. I think any filmmaker who is a good enough filmmaker could achieve that type of storytelling. I just think Western filmmakers are I think recent Western films have been so much more cynical that I don't think they would spare their characters the way this movie does. I think it's a lot easier to kill your character than it is to spare them. You can kill a character and that instantly adds weight to a movie. It instantly adds emotion because somebody died. It's a very melodramatic thing to do. It's a very easy way to raise the stakes. What's a lot harder is to have a big emotional payoff and to raise your stakes while keeping your characters alive. That is so much harder to do, and I think Minus One achieved that in a beautiful way, which I think elevated it above almost every other movie. Just movie. I think that really worked hard to elevate the film and make it have this beautiful message about life. I thought it was great. Part of you wants to see how she survived the atomic blast moment, but I can imagine. I don't really care how she survived. I am happy as well that she can maybe marry Shikishima, and I think they will. And I think they'll be happy together. I know what your first video was 9 years ago. Well, that is pretty neat. I too know what my first video was 9 years ago. When I saw the film, not only we cried, the people working in the theater can hear us crying. I'm the loudest person who was crying so loud. I'm glad to hear the movie emotionally resonated with you. There was 2 times in the movie that I was really brought to tears when I saw it in Japan. I was brought to tears last night at one scene as well. It was a different scene. I can't remember what scene got me. One of the scenes got me that did not get me in Japan. But the scene that brought me to tears the first time in Japan was when Shikishima was crying in the black rain, when he was screaming in the black rain. That is a gut punch. That was so goddamn sad. I loved it. The other thing that brought me to tears was the ending of the movie when Noriko survived. Actually, what brought me to tears was when everybody was hugging Shikishima. When Mizushima hugged Shikishima at the end of the movie. And then he found out Noriko was survived. And the way that Ota was hitting him, like calling back to the way that she was angry at him at the start of the film. Another gut punch that was so tragic, and I loved it. I loved it. I legit thought he was going to die when he left the note and the money. Like, he made up his decision. I did too. When he left the money, I kind of knew he was going to die in Japan. So I didn't think the end of the movie was remarkably surprising. Like, nothing in the ending of the movie was like, oh man, I did not know that was going to happen. For instance, the second that Godzilla pops out of the, like, I knew that the plan wasn't going to work. I knew that they were going to sink Godzilla. I knew it wasn't going to kill him. I knew they'd have to raise him up with the balloons. When he shredded the balloons, I thought that's no surprise. When they raised him out of the water, I thought the way they raised him out of the water was surprising. But when they raised him out of the water and he starts to bloat and then doesn't die, I still wasn't surprised that he didn't die. When all of a sudden Godzilla is about to atomic breath everybody and kill them, and then you see the plane flying in, wasn't a surprise either. And then when Shikishima crashes into Godzilla's mouth, wasn't a surprise. I really thought he was going to kill himself, because for the longest time I was expecting him to have a very Kobayashi-styled sacrifice, like in Godzilla Raids Again. So seeing it was just kind of like, oh, I kind of guessed this. That's interesting. But then when he was proven to be alive, that was surprising to me. And that emotionally resonated so much harder than if he had died. Oh my god, I was on the edge of my seat during that, though. During that silent period when I thought Godzilla really might win. I really thought I thought there in the back of my head, I thought they might blow up everybody and kill them all. And Godzilla might win the movie. And it might be a very nihilistic ending, which I thought was going to be so goddamn sad. And I'm so glad they didn't do that. Very good child actress as well. She is so great, isn't she? I mean, I said it in a video and I said that it was really, she's kind of steals the scenes whenever she's in them, because she's got this like stiffness to her, this kind of awkwardness to her. And then when she cries, it's so sad. She's just so adorable, and you want to see her protected and you want to see her taken care of. It was a really well cast child actor, and she played it great. I thought she was really great. The lack of a death scene is a nice counterpoint to the original. Serizawa sacrificed himself so invention wouldn't survive, so the future is safe. Shikishima lived so he could share in the future. Raph, that is a great point, and I think it makes why I felt this movie was so powerful. I think that's a great way to explain kind of what I feel about it. Like, I didn't think the movie needed a tragic sacrificial ending like in the original film. I thought that the way they handled it here was so touching and surprising that they saved all their characters' lives. And I agree, it was a very different type of emotionally resonant ending than we saw in the original film. And I really loved that. And if it was just Shikishima killed himself to stop Godzilla, it would be like, okay, I've seen that in a couple Godzilla movies. It doesn't do anything because I've seen it in a couple Godzilla movies, so it doesn't do enough for me. Yes, the scene where their family is exposed and the coldness exhibited were just brutal. That scene where he's basically like, "I'm not your dad," was really rough. That was so sad. Poor little girl. I really, really hope that family is very happy together afterward, because they just deserve to be happy. I got emotional when seeing the Takao battleship ring into frame, blasting Godzilla, and seeing the J7W Shinden intercept being the mystery plane. I really like that they played with real world history so much. The fact that it was the taco, the real one, the fact that it was the real Shinden that they were using, I thought was such a really cool way to take history and make it, bring it back to life. I really loved the research that was clearly put in here. I thought it was going to be like Haruo sacrificed at the end of the anime trilogy. Godzilla 154. That is literally exactly what I was thinking during the ending scene. Actually, I think that's kind of why the impact didn't really set in with me when he was flying towards Godzilla, because actually, I thought that they were going to recreate that moment just a little differently. When I saw it in Japan the very first time, and you saw the plane flying in, that is exactly what I thought of, because I have just watched The Planet Eater very recently. So I thought of Haruo when he was flying the vulture into Godzilla, and what I thought was going to happen was that Godzilla was going to turn his head, fire his beam, and it was going to blow up the plane, but the explosion was still going to travel back fast enough to hit Godzilla, exploding him as well. I thought the way they did it was a lot more interesting than that. And again, I really liked that they saved their character, because otherwise it would just be a little obvious. It was genuinely the most powerful work of art I've seen. I've had the chance to watch on the big screen. Spino Dragon, I'm really happy to see that. I'm happy to hear you saw the movie and had a great time with it. That makes me really happy that you had that experience. I thought it was such a powerful film as well. I like the Godzillasaurus head had a better design than the actual design. I disagree with that big time. Minus One is my favorite Godzilla design that I have ever seen, because takes Godzilla classic and just makes him more vicious, which is what I've always wanted. I don't want Godzilla to be reinvented, because I think he's near perfect already. Also, the GVK, the Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah Godzilla store scene was great in my opinion. Had a great payoff. The payoff was great, and I do agree about that. But I thought the whole scene was so clunky, and I don't like the pacing of it. I think it's awkward. I actually don't like Ifukube's music in that scene. Until he's dying. I think the dying theme is pretty good. But I think Godzilla's whole rampage in that sequence is really clunky. I'm not big into that scene in the 91 movie. I really don't like any of it. The whole silence scene had me stressed for a minute or two. This silence was such a great decision, and it really raised the stakes. That was a great use of silence in film. I loved it. It's the first movie I've given a sincere 10 out of 10. Literally had 0 issues. That is wonderful to hear. I was trying to think, do I have any issues for Minus One? And I kind of said this in my spoiler-free review. Minus One's not really a movie that I have issues with, as much as that there are things that I think could have been added. It's like a perfect meal that I go, there's nothing I would change about this meal. But if I could add a side or two, I would. And that's not to say that I was missing the side. I'm full. I'm satisfied. I had my meal and I'm full. But I could go for a dessert and stuff myself. That's kind of how I feel about Minus One. Like, I thought it was great. And I wouldn't change it. I don't think I'd change a thing about it. But if I got more of it, then I'd be even happier. You seemed not to know that during the boat scene when Godzilla's atomic breath came out, in the bottom of the explosion there was a fire that looked like Godzilla's dorsals. I'm going to have to rewatch the movie to know what you're talking about. In the bottom of the explosion, during the boat scene, when Godzilla's atomic breath came out from the bottom of the boat, when he shoots it up like Godzilla vs. Kong, there was a fire that looked like Godzilla's dorsals. I didn't notice that, so I'll have to look for it. I loved the Ginza scene where Godzilla just starts destroying everything alongside Goji's main theme. The fact that they used the 1964 march, the fact that they used that rather than Godzilla's main march, the fact that they used a Godzilla destruction theme for Godzilla's destruction was so S tier for me. I could not believe it. I was so surprised in the theater to hear that because the soundtrack had not been released by the time I saw the movie. So hearing that song play was so wonderful. And such a wonderful payoff to me as an Ifukube fan, as somebody who plays the music on piano. So wonderful. And I loved that Godzilla's March was used when the military kicked the shit out of him. That's what it should be used for. I am Japanese. I am very sorry that I cannot participate in this discussion because I do not understand English. Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to say your name. I'm sorry that you can't participate in the discussion, but I appreciate you tuning in. I had a few pacing issues, but the film was amazing. Personally, I did not have pacing issues. And as someone who saw it without subtitles, and I thought I might have pacing issues, and even upon a third watch, I have not felt that the movie drags at all. I adore how they didn't use the oxygen destroyer. They use similar imagery, but not the oxygen destroyer in concept or design, paying homage, but not needlessly using it for nostalgia or pandering. I completely agree. I think that actually I really like the way that the oxygen destroyer was reworked into the orthogonal diagonalizer. I really loved that because you took the iconic design but repurposed it thematically for the show Godzilla Singular Point. I really liked that Godzilla Minus One did not use the oxygen destroyer because it'd be too obvious, it'd be too definitive of a way to kill Godzilla, it'd be too obvious to know the second they brought the thing out, you knew where the movie was gonna go. So I really liked that they didn't do that. That they did their own thing, and they came up with the most realistic way to attack Godzilla that we have ever seen in a Godzilla movie. And I loved it. I loved it. I loved the plan against Godzilla. I have a feeling that a lot of Western fans are going to be pissed off that balloons kicked Godzilla's ass. But I loved it because it was it was an original plan, and also what I thought was so cool about it was that line, which I obviously didn't pick up on when I watched the movie in Japan, but this line where they say, we're going to use the power of the ocean against Godzilla, or the power of the sea against Godzilla. What a perfect line. What a perfect idea to weaponize nature against Godzilla. You can't defeat Godzilla. Man is not powerful enough to defeat Godzilla, but nature is, and they weaponized nature against Godzilla. That's the first time they've done that in a Godzilla movie. What a cool idea. I loved it. And seeing Godzilla's eyes swell up, seeing his body swell up, seeing him get so deformed was so cool. I could not get enough of it, specifically when his eyes kind of swell up like he's in a saw trap. That was great. I loved the way they attacked Godzilla. I thought the whole plan was really exciting. I loved seeing it executed. And I really liked that it worked. I'm glad that it wasn't one of those movies where needless obstacles keep showing up. Like, yes, sinking Godzilla didn't kill him. He also evaded them raising him to the surface, which also was an added obstacle. They had to get the tugboats to pull him apart, which was a great payoff to Mizushima. It was a great payoff to his story where he thought that'd be a good way to raise Godzilla, and then he proved it could work. It was a really good way to justify him and make him equal and on par with his peers. What a fucking fantastic character arc that guy had. I just loved it all around. I loved the whole thing. I was really into the way they defeated Godzilla. And yeah, I don't know. I guess I was really happy that it worked. I've talked to some people, and I won't name them, but I talked to somebody who was saying that they did not like that it just went over so easy. They felt that it was too easy, that the movie was just kind of simple, and that there wasn't enough stakes. And I just couldn't agree more. Oh, thank you very much, Saturn Dusk. Welcome to the stream. Be courteous and tip your streamer. I'll rewatch this after I watch Minus One Saturday. I'll enjoy Saturday and hopefully Sunday definitively. Well, I really hope you enjoy the movie. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate that. You were so generous. I really appreciate the support, man. And I really hope you enjoy the movie. And I can't wait to talk to you about it. I'll definitely message you about it on Discord to hear what you think about it. Easily top 3 Godzilla films. That's great to hear, Jesse. That's what we like to hear, man. As a 70th anniversary movie, this was absolutely fantastic. I would say the 50th was more fun. I'm not a big... I actually don't really like Final Wars all that much, but I thought this was a much better anniversary Godzilla film. And I have a friend, another friend, a different friend who I won't name as well, who many of you probably know who it is. I have a different friend who saw this movie and was not very impressed with it. He didn't think it did enough original. He just didn't feel it did enough. Where was I going with that point? Oh, you know where I was going with that? One of the issues, sometimes I get distracted by the chat and then my brain totally just way off track. One of his issues with the movie was that he felt like we had just gotten Shin Godzilla. We need, he said that there should be one solo Godzilla movie every generation, and that's about it. We don't need one this close to the last one. Like, it hasn't been long enough to justify another solo Godzilla movie. The reason I disagree is not because I think that we need more solo Godzilla films. I think that you can really only do so much in a solo Godzilla movie, and I don't think that there's a ton of opportunity to go somewhere else with one from here. I actually think there's a lot of opportunity to do it. I just don't think you'd have a budget to support some of those ideas that I'd have for a solo Godzilla movie, for instance. I'd make mine I'd get more international with it and a little more political with it. Bring in some other countries, make Godzilla an international threat, make him go elsewhere, not just Japan. I think that'd be interesting. But the point is, as far as a retelling of the solo Godzilla story, he felt like Shin Godzilla satisfied him. And for me, the reason Shin Godzilla didn't satisfy me is just because it doesn't have the DNA of Godzilla enough. It's got Godzilla in it and then a lot of bloat. The shape-shifting Godzilla, the beams out of the back, the tail beam. It's fun stuff. I love Shin Godzilla, but it doesn't feel like the true Godzilla. And so I would not say Shin Godzilla is a definitive Godzilla film for the generation. I don't think it should be, because it's too different. I think Minus One took Godzilla back to what was Godzilla and gave the definitive solo Godzilla film for the generation that wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel, but was simply trying to clean it up, revamp it, and release it. And I thought that Minus One did that very well, personally. Good storytelling and SOS acting will always outperform CGI, and Minus One proves it. Yes, there were some CGI opportunities, but the CGI was spot on when it really needed to be. Yeah, there's some areas where the CG, you can tell that they have a lower budget than some of the other films, but I agree. I think, like, generally speaking, I think Godzilla Minus One was a strong enough wartime drama that I don't need Godzilla in it in the first place. I thought Shikishima's story was so devastating, and I really, really liked it, but I didn't need a Godzilla in the movie to be entertained. In fact, I think when Godzilla shows up, it's just a different level of entertainment, because the movie is still a good, interesting drama, regardless of if Godzilla's in it or not. The second they mentioned dragging her to the bottom of the ocean, I knew what the plan was. Instantly knew that they were what they were trying to do, especially if you pay attention to the fish. Because they all float up and they're dead and they're bubbled. I didn't even notice that, but now that you say it, I connect the dots. I was wondering what the hell happened to those fish, because the fish are so weird looking. They're like all bubbled and strange looking, but if that's what they were doing, that's a really good point, Godzilla 154. That's a great catch. That is a great catch. I wish they'd mentioned the balloons were, like, strongly reinforced. Why? Godzilla chewed through the balloons. He escaped them. They clearly didn't work, so it didn't matter. They weren't reinforced, and that's why he got out. The tugboats sure fit attached to the naval ships quick. Fox didn't bother me. What do you think about Godzilla's atomic breath hurting him? When he used it on Japan, it looked painful, which might be why they didn't use it on the plane. Why he didn't use it on the plane. I loved it. I loved that Godzilla's atomic breath hurt him, and here's why I loved it so much. Godzilla 154. Yes, that friend happens too. Yes, you're right. Sorry. What I loved about Godzilla being injured by the atomic breath, why I think it is so brilliant, why I think it is the smartest use of the atomic breath we have literally ever seen, is because not even Godzilla gets free reign of nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons are devastating not just to the people they're used on, but to the people who use them. America is still tarnished by the use of the atomic bomb in World War II to this day. It didn't cause just simply damage to Japan, it also caused repercussions to America that we still experience to this day. The use of nuclear weapons will never ever be clean and simple. It will never be a way to just say, boom, you're blown up. That sucks for you. I'm fine though. There will always be repercussions for it. And if Godzilla used that beam close enough to himself, he may have very well vaporized himself. I thought it was such a beautiful, perfect metaphor for atomic bombs, for the way that people can use atomic bombs in real life, and the way that it still has personal consequences for them. What a great idea. And what a great use of atomic weapons in a movie, especially coming off the back of Monarch, which in the Monsterverse, which kind of glorifies the use of atomic weapons, where Legacy of Monsters kind of makes it like, the worst thing that ever happened on the day of Castle Bravo was that one woman cried. And it totally glances over the very real world consequences that occurred to a point where it's like, they may as well have had the Japanese bombing Pearl Harbor as a way to try and defeat Godzilla. Like that's on the level of disrespect that I think that Legacy of Monsters portrays the atomic bomb. It's so insensitive, where it would be like, actually, Pearl Harbor was okay because they were trying to fight Godzilla. It was weird. It was a weird, insensitive use of the bomb. The way that Godzilla and Godzilla versus Kong or King of the Monsters is like blasting holes to the center of the earth and it's just purely a spectacle. It's fine because the movies aren't trying to have a deeper nuclear allegory. But the reason it will never hold the same weight to me as something like Minus One or Shin Godzilla is because those movies use the atomic breath to say something bigger. And I don't think you need to do that most of the time. In fact, I'd say most of the time you shouldn't do that. Most of the time, Godzilla's atomic breath should be a spectacle for the audience. It should just be fun. But it will never hold the same weight as when it means something like here. And the fact that Godzilla himself got so injured by the bomb was, I thought, smarter than the use of the atomic breath in any other movie that we have ever seen. I loved it! It's also why I think that Godzilla's atomic breath in this movie would kick the shit out of other Godzillas, because if it could hurt himself and he's standing miles away from it, imagine if he hit a Godzilla point blank. I think a Showa Godzilla would just get blown up. I don't think it'd die. I think it'd just get knocked the heck out. I think a Monsterverse Godzilla, if you remove the radiation angle, which sometimes powers Godzilla up and sometimes it does nothing, I think it would beat that guy to the ground too. I think it'd knock him out. I think it'd knock him down anyways. I think he'd have a hard time with it. I thought it was great. And I also liked that it was like, he's got to charge that shit up. He can't spam that thing because that costs a lot of energy. Seeing the GMK references made me happy too. I personally am not the biggest GMK fan on earth. I think it is a good movie. I think it is also simultaneously an overrated movie. And I think that Minus One took all of the ideas that GMK did, and I thought that the Minus One use of it was more interesting. Personally. But that's a big hot take right there. And I understand why GMK is so beloved, because it is a great movie. I just don't think it... I think this movie was a little more purposeful with its use of the things that it did similar to GMK. Like the Mushroom Cloud in GMK. It really doesn't hold any weight because we don't see it personally. Godzilla never does it again. And this movie made it a lot more heavy and purposeful, and I liked it better because of that. King Kong vs. Godzilla's theme is in Godzilla Minus One. Hyper? Yes, it goddamn was, and it was so good! It was so good! Godzilla Minus One has my favorite iterations of Ifukube's music that has been recorded. I loved it. I thought that the way they used that theme, the King Kong vs. Godzilla theme, which is also the end credits theme, that's more accurately what it is. It's more accurately the rewritten end credits theme for Godzilla vs. Destroya, which just so happens to be the last theme Ifukube ever presented to screen for Godzilla. What a beautiful way to bring that back in here for the 70th anniversary. It's so good. It's so good. I loved it. I loved it. That comment is going to take me a minute to understand. Minus One seems like what The Thing 2011 was to The Thing 1982, a hollow imitation. I so could not disagree with you more. Yes, I loved the ending title for Godzilla vs. Destroyer being used, and I thought it was the best iteration of that stuff ever. I loved it. I really enjoy how many new ideas Minus One used for its story. Me too. The fact that they literally attempted to implode Godzilla was probably the best human strategy ever. Using both compression and decompression was genius. I agree, again, you're using the laws of nature against Godzilla. That's why it is so clever. I think it's clever because it's not like, we've built a weapon that can fight a Godzilla. Because it's not science saving the day in the way that the scientist creates a device. It's science saving the day in that we understand the laws of nature so well that we know that Godzilla, not even Godzilla, is above the laws of nature. One thing that I think is interesting, and I've mentioned this in many videos recently, in live streams or whatever, I've talked to some Godzilla fans recently in Japan, and I was talking to one in particular who said the difference between American Godzilla fans and Japanese Godzilla fans as well. Japanese Godzilla fans, they still recognize Godzilla as a tragic character. He is an abomination. He is a mutation. He is a metaphor for the atomic bomb. American Godzilla fans, or Western Godzilla fans, view Godzilla as a vengeful god, someone who's justified in his destruction, and someone who cannot be defeated or touched. And I appreciate that this movie reminds us that Godzilla is not God. He's a monster. And monsters can be defeated because they too obey the laws of the universe. They too obey nature. I thought it was really smart. I loved seeing his regeneration on screen, and forming half of his face back was so cool. That scene audibly made me go, ugh, when I saw it the first time. The way his eye goes like, and flicks back and looks at you. That was so cool. I loved it because, again, it kind of goes back to that thing where it's like, Godzilla was created by the atomic bomb. Godzilla can regenerate, and we never see it on screen. Godzilla 2000 shows a bit of regeneration, but it was nowhere near as satisfying or compelling or believable as it was in this movie, where it was like, this guy is so crazy. I also loved that Godzilla was susceptible to damage internally, but not externally. Like, he had this weird impenetrable skin, but internally he's flesh and blood. So smart. So smart. I loved it. And I loved seeing Godzilla get the top of his head blown off. That was great. The story was so amazing that I almost forgot I was watching a Godzilla film, and I still loved it. That's why it's my all-time favorite movie. That is exactly the reason why it was everybody I saw the movies with favorite as well. The reason that everybody I saw with last night said it was their favorite Godzilla movie ever was because everybody agreed that if you removed Godzilla, it was still a good movie. And while it personally is not my favorite, I completely agree that if you remove Godzilla, it's still a good movie. I have seen so many fans, by the way, saying this is the best movie since the original. And I wonder if the original will ever be allowed to be topped in the fan base. Will there ever come a day when people admit that there's better Godzilla movies? Because quality-wise, pound for pound, this is a better, more well-made movie. Thematically, the reason I think the original is still probably my favorite over this one is because thematically, I think it does more. This movie is much more refined in what it is saying thematically and beautiful. The original movie, I think, had more to say, and it was more relevant at the time it said it. And maybe that's the reason it really never will be topped, because maybe people agree with me about that. But I think a lot of Godzilla fans on Twitter truly believe that there are better Godzilla movies and will never admit it because the original is the original and you can't say anything's better than the original. But hey, the original is not even my favorite Godzilla movie. I still like the dumb King Kong vs. Godzilla movie over it. I think that 1962 film is more fun. Obviously, it's trying to be. But I think it's also a very clever movie. It's more nostalgic, and I just think I like it more. I don't think it's a better movie, but I like it more. Godzilla Minus One, I think, might be a better, more well-made movie. But I don't like it as much. So I have weird scales in terms of Godzilla. And so maybe I'm one of those people as well, where it's like, I too might never top the original in terms of thematic weight, but I'm curious if people are doing it because they genuinely mean it or are posers. It was a bit odd hearing Mothra's motif during Godzilla's attack, in my opinion. That might be one of the only things that took me out of the movie. When I saw it the first time, I was also thrown off by the fact that Mothra's motif was used. The reason I'm chill with it is because that motif, I think, unless I'm misremembering, I'm very confident that motif plays during some of Godzilla's destruction in the 1964 film. I'm very confident it does. And so I was kind of okay with it, because Ifukube wrote that as the opening crawl for that movie. It was meant for Godzilla, plays a couple times during Godzilla's attack, during these attack sequences, and I was fine with it. Although I would have preferred the Attack on the Dune theme. Bam, 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 bam. I miss that. I think that's got a lot more weight to it, and was also a riff on Godzilla's original Rampage theme. And so I would have liked to hear it. But I was so happy with what we got that I'm not complaining, and I'm fine with it. It did take me out of the movie the first time, but every other time I've seen it, I'm right there with Childish. I felt like I ascended every single time. It was so good. Yes, one of the always actors was in both movies. The actor who played Noda was. Yeah, it was great in IMAX. I really loved how much Godzilla's regeneration was utilized in this film. It's typically one of the most underlooked abilities in most films. Yeah, and it was interesting because, yes, it wasn't just used once, and it still extracted a toll on the guy. He still had scar tissue from using it, which I thought was great. And also, he uses it consistently because he's consistently getting damaged. And it goes back to another thing that I've said, and is probably the reason why Minus One is my favorite iteration of Godzilla. I don't want an overpowered Godzilla who can rip through everything, who can tear through everything, who can blow everything up he comes into contact with. I want a Godzilla who is susceptible to being damaged. I want a Godzilla who's able to be hurt. I want a Godzilla who's not invincible. I want a Godzilla who has to try. And Minus One's Godzilla had to try. He had to try to knock buildings down. The scene when he's attacking the theater and then he tail swipes it, that was great because he was putting effort into his destruction. It was so much fun. And I loved that he has to climb up onto the taco and start smashing it and bashing it and biting it. It was a great, great way to show Godzilla putting in effort, to putting in, he had to try. He was getting hurt by the cannons. He is able to be damaged internally. You could blow part of his face off. It was so clever, and it made it way more intense because they really could defeat Godzilla. They actually stood a chance. And if Godzilla is just this invincible, undefeatable thing, there's no point to the movie. I don't know. That's how I feel. Godzilla 154 is the only person on the planet who will say that. Good example of doing humans right instead of just using them for reaction shots, feeling more grounded than a 1 hour monster romp. Yes. Absolutely, the human cast was incredibly well used. They all had personalities. They all had different personalities. They all brought something different to the table. They all had different skills that they were able to utilize. They all justified their existence in this movie. They weren't just scientists or people reacting to the chaos or people running around. They all brought something different to the film. They all had different personalities. It was really, really well handled. I loved it. Little Dark Age agrees that Godzilla vs. Mothra is an amazing movie. We like to see that. What did you think of the pre-radiation Godzilla that didn't have much explanation? I loved seeing a younger Godzilla that grew up on screen. I liked it because it was kind of like on Odo Island, he just exists. We didn't need to spend time being like, there's a dinosaur in this world. I like that he just showed up and it was like, oh, that's Godzilla. Of course it is, because he lives here. I liked that we just hit the ground running and we didn't need to waste time on unnecessary backstory because who cares? Who cares why there's a dinosaur still living on that island? We don't need to waste our time with it. It was just, he exists. That's it. The license plate on the motorcycle was something like 1.594. Flip a few things around 1954. I'll have to look for that today when I see the movie again. I agree, this movie made me appreciate Godzilla trying to take things out more. As much as I loved King of the Monsters, I feel like Doherty should have struggled more when facing Ghidorah. I think he should have struggled more when facing Ghidorah in the Arctic. I think he should have struggled more when facing Ghidorah in the ocean. I think he should have struggled more when facing Ghidorah on land. I think that he should have struggled more to take on the ships in Godzilla vs. Kong. I think he should have struggled more against Kong. I think the MonsterVerse Godzilla is the exact opposite of compelling. He shows up, he's a big gun, he knocks things down. That's it. There's never any stakes. He's gonna do exactly what you think he's gonna do, including sometimes he's gonna lose exactly when you think he will in the plot, just because that's what he does. I don't think he's a compelling character because he's too overpowered and inconsistent. And that's why I personally am not too into him. He can just do too much. He can do too much. I like a Godzilla who cannot do too much. I like a Godzilla who's slow and clunky. Do you want a sequel to Minus One or another reboot or start another continuity, perhaps versus films? I would like a sequel to Minus One only under the condition that the director Takashi Yamazaki returns to do it. And if I was to see a sequel, I would hope that there would be more than just Godzilla in it. How long until the bar set by Minus One is surpassed? I think a while. I think we're going to have to wait a long time. In terms of public reception, I think people will do the thing that Godzilla fans do where they say it's the greatest movie ever. A couple months later, it will no longer be the greatest Godzilla movie ever. In fact, it'll be mid-tier. And then after a couple years, it'll get kind of the love it deserves and it'll land somewhere in the middle. That's what I think will happen, because that happens with every single Godzilla movie that comes out. That's what's going to happen here. We need Mothra in the sequel, since we know MonsterVerse isn't going to have them fight each other. Fair enough reasoning. Mothra is not where I would head next. I would go for somebody a little more... I personally think Anguirus was the greatest follow-up to a solo Godzilla movie we've gotten, because it was such a natural monster that it still played with the idea that these things aren't too outlandish yet. Mothra is if you do Mothra very grounded, it could be very interesting. But you'd have to totally change the mythology of the character to do that. It is hip to hate. You are right about that. People do turn on things quickly on Twitter anyways. I think people will turn on Minus One on Twitter in no time, just because Twitter's Twitter and Twitter will Twitter. Or X is X and X will X, I should say. But I think Minus One is a pretty incredible movie. Godzilla Minus Two, Godzilla Raids Again remake parallels like Godzilla Minus One was the original 1954 sort of remake. Bring us Anguirus. Joe, I agree. I think that Godzilla Raids Again has so much potential to be remade into a more meaningful and intense movie, and Yamazaki would be the guy to do it. Or give us a really, really weird mutant freak for Godzilla to fight in the next movie. Maybe those skin chunks that blow off in Ginza. Maybe those reanimate into some weird gargantua. Give me something weird, too. I like it. Biollante could be a very easy stepping stone with those things that blew off Godzilla, and they could reanimate into something else. You could use those Godzilla cells to reanimate into any monster if you gave it a compelling enough reason. Maybe the skin flake blasted off Godzilla and it landed on a plant and it grows it into Biollante. Maybe it blasted off Godzilla and it landed on an insect and it grows into a Mothra. I feel like this movie kind of is a Raids Again remake. Yeah, I would agree. I think that this movie had a lot of similarities to Godzilla Raids Again. A lot of them, especially with the character dynamics in the movie. Maybe make a tragic victim of Godzilla's aggression post-mutation. That could work as well. Actually, has my pitch for a legendary Godzilla 3 that will never happen. That's exactly what my pitch is. You'd rather there not be a sequel, let alone let another talented artist take their spin on Godzilla and keep things fresh. The reason that I wouldn't want that, Blue, is just because I have a feeling that if they keep giving Godzilla films to new artists, they're going to keep telling the same type of story. Unless Toho takes a really big swing with the next movie and goes full Millennium era, where it's like all of a sudden it's a fresh continuity and a versus film, I don't see them doing that. I see them just doing another solo movie, and I don't think we need it. The reason that I don't want to just reboot with another director at the helm is because I want to see some consistency. I want to see things carried through. I want to see things develop. I don't want to keep retreading. I don't want to be reintroduced to a new Godzilla again. I don't need to be reintroduced to a new Godzilla. I don't need to be reintroduced to a new world, to new rules, to new lore. It would bog down and waste time. I'm not a fan of the Millennium era very much. I think the Millennium series is the most stale Godzilla series, personally. I know that a lot of people are not Heisei fans. I think the Heisei series is stronger than the Millennium series on the whole. I think the Millennium series has interesting movies, but overall, I think they lack more than they give. And unless you get a really talented, strange artist like Kaneko to do another Godzilla movie, where he can do some very different things with Godzilla, if that's the direction they go, then that's okay. But even those were all tied to the 54 movie. Those were playing off themes and lore we already knew. And I don't want to be tied back to the 54 movie anymore. I don't know. Monarch drops in 2 minutes. Do I watch it or watch the stream? The new Monarch episode is very good. I'll review it tomorrow. I like it a lot. It's a very fresh episode, presents a lot of new ideas. The reason it's one of my faves is because it presents new ideas, and it does those very well. The new Monarch episode is very good, but it's also not a very spoilery episode. So if you're worried about spoilers, it is not a very spoilery episode. Like if you're like, oh, I gotta get there to get the Godzilla screen time before it's posted all over Twitter. Not a very spoilery type of episode. You're not going to be missing much. But it's a very great character episode. So if you want to see great character development, that's what the new Monarch episode excels in. Yes, I like continuity more. I like continuity movies more than I like anthologies, personally. I think anthologies have their place. And I just feel like they kind of retread a lot, though. That's kind of what I am not huge into that. I don't want to be retreading. I want to keep doing new. I want to keep pushing us forward. And if you have someone like Yamazaki to keep building new themes, that's what I would love. I don't want to see them pass the series around from director to director and wind up disjointed like the Monsterverse. I could see both sides of it, though. Because we never would have gotten Shin Godzilla. We never would have gotten -1 if we got a Shin Godzilla 2. And I prefer -1 over a Shin Godzilla 2. So, I don't know. It's all about who they get to do it, I suppose. I liked when the man said, "Let's go catch us a Godzilla." I loved that line as well. That was a great line. What happened to Noriko? I don't know if you already talked about this. Yeah, I talked about this at the start of the stream, but I'll reiterate here. Yes, the telegram was a little predictable, but I don't care about the predictability of the movie. I still thought that the movie's execution was so strong that even though sometimes it was obvious to tell where things were headed, I still thought it was done in such a compelling way. Basically, with Noriko, it's just a symbolization for how she has scarred from the use of Godzilla's atomic breath. She's been marked permanently. She now too carries the scars of war. In terms of the plot, I'll have to dive into the novelization for myself, but as I understand it, it's kind of implying that, like, you know, Godzilla in some ways is what kept her alive, because his cells were scattered throughout the city. They were alive in and of themselves, and there's the potential that she is being kept alive by that in some sort of way, but she's permanently marked and changed forever as a result of her experience. Yeah, sometimes the obvious answer is the best one. I completely agree. Sometimes it's the obvious answer for a reason. The only movie that made a difference in the country, the only movie that is made in a different country with a different story each time is Godzilla, and it's been 70 years. Yes, Godzilla is the most long-living franchise as a result of it constantly reinventing itself. The Godzilla franchise would not have survived this long if it was like James Bond, where we were following 1 or 2 continuities the whole time. And I think that's the power of Godzilla. I'm going to take off here, guys. I got to go get to my next showing of -1. So I'm actually going to end it here because I want to go get to the theater. I'm going to go see it again. I'll do my spoiler review for -1 probably Saturday, because tomorrow I'm going to release my video on Legacy of Monsters Episode 4, one of the better episodes, I think, but I'm a character guy first and a plot guy second. So there you go. Sorry, see you, Childish. Go enjoy Monarch. Bye, Philip. Bye, Godzilla 154. See you, Todd. Thank you guys all for tuning in. I will continue to stream. I'll try and stream a bit more this week. Maybe we'll do another Monarch stream in the next couple days. Probably not. I'll probably do another, because the next episode doesn't really have that much juicy stuff to bite into. I'll probably do another minus one stream in a couple days when more people have had a chance to see the movie. Thank you very much, Todd. I appreciate that. See you, Spino Dragon. Take it easy, man. See you guys. Bye. If you want to support the channel, Godzilla X Kong trailer stream. Let's see how Sunday goes. It's going to be a very busy weekend, so let's see how it all fits together. But I'll try. Maybe I will. I don't know. Let's see how it all happens. I'm going to try and do my trailer reaction and breakdown, and that takes time, so I don't know. All right. Thank you guys all for tuning in. If you want to continue to support the channel, please consider checking out the Patreon if you want. It's through the support of the Patreon that I was actually able to take a bunch of time off work to do all this content for you this month. If you want to do that, you can check out the link. I think it should be in the description below, or it's all over the channel. And thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you guys next time for the next one. Until then, have a great night and enjoy the new Monarch episode. D-Man.